story begins with an injury. The narrator's brother, Jim, got his arm broken when he was nearly 13 years old. Luckily, his bum arm doesn't interfere with Jim's mad football skills, so he doesn't care much. Years afterward, brother and narrator argue over where the story really starts. The narrator blames it on the Yule family, while Jim, the older sibling by 4 years, puts the beginning at the summer they first met Dill. The flash-forward conversation continues. The narrator says that if you want to get all technical about it, everything began with Andrew Jackson, whose actions led their forefather, Simon Finch, to settle where he did. So now, let's flash back. Simon Finch was a pious and miserly Englishman who left his home country to wander around America before settling in Alabama with his accumulated wealth, his family, and his slaves. Yes, I said slaves. Simon's homestead was called Finch's Landing, of course, and was a mostly self-sufficient estate run by Simon's male descendants, who sold cotton to buy what the farm couldn't produce itself. The Civil War put an end to a lot of that, like the slave owner, but the tradition of living off the land remained until now. Atticus, the narrator's father, studied law in Montgomery, while his brother went all the way to Boston to become a doctor. The only Finch left at the landing is their sister Alexandra and her quiet husband. After becoming a lawyer, Atticus sets up shop in Macomb, the county seat of Macomb County, 20 miles from Finch's Landing. Out of the flashback into the present time of the story, the narrator thinks about the Macomb he, we don't know which yet, knew. It's not a happening place. Everyone moves slower than sweat, and there's not much worth hurrying for, let alone much sense of what might be happening outside of the county lines. The narrator lives on the town's main residential drag with her brother Jim, her father Atticus, and their cook Calpurnia, who is a force to be reckoned with. You may notice there's no mom to be found. She died when the narrator was 2, and the narrator doesn't really remember her, though Jim does. The story really gets underway the summer when the narrator is 5 going on 6, and Jim is 9 going on 10. This is the summer Dill arrives in Macomb. He's 6 going on 7, but he looks younger. He introduces himself. "I'm Charles Baker Harris, and I can read." He says that people call him Dill, so we will too. Dill says he's from Meridian, Mississippi, but he's spending the summer with his aunt, the Finch's next-door neighbor, Miss Rachel. Unlike the rural Finches, he has access to movie theaters, and so he tells them the story of Dracula. They ask Dill about his absent father. Apparently, this is a sore subject. Jim, Dill, and the narrator spend the summer acting out stories from the books they've read over and over and over. Sound boring? Eventually the kids think so too. Dill comes to the rescue with a new idea. They can try to make Boo Radley come out. The Radley place is the haunted house of the neighborhood, complete with a ghost, Boo Radley, who got in trouble with the law as a teenager and has been holed up in the house unseen ever since. The house has quite the reputation with the neighborhood kids who avoid it at all cost. Now we hear a story about Boo, courtesy of Jim, courtesy of Miss Stephanie Crawford, the neighborhood busybody. When Boo was 33 years old, he was cutting out newspaper articles for a scrapbook when he suddenly stabbed the scissors into his father's leg, then calmly went back to what he was doing. After that, Boo was locked up by the police, briefly, and there was talk of sending him to an insane asylum. In the end, he ended up back in the Radley place. When Boo's father died, Boo's older brother, Nathan, moved in to take over. Nothing much changed at the Radley place. Rumor has it that Boo gets out at night and stalks around the neighborhood, but none of the kids has ever actually seen him. Jim makes up horror stories about what Boo's like. Think a cross between a vampire and a zombie, but Dill still wants to see him. Or rather, he wants Jim to go knock on the Radley's door. Jim tries to get out of the dare without showing that he's scared, but then he gives in when Dill says he doesn't have to knock, just touch the door. Jim works up his nerve, dashes up to the house, slaps the door, and runs back at top speed without looking behind him. After reaching the safety of their own porch, the kids look at the Radley place, but all they see is the hint of an inside shutter moving.